slide.
Yeah.
For this, for the motion.
Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled Scarborough Board of Education meeting. The date is Thursday, August 18th, 2022. May I have the roll, please?
Yes, Mrs. Giftis,
She's been excused.
Mr. Kelleher,
Here.
Miss Leong. Here. Mrs. Lindstrom,
Here.
Mr. Peony Huff. Here. Mrs. Turner.
Here.
Miss Bertulia. Here. And Mr. Shumway.
Here.
Perfect. Can everybody please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, all right. Agenda item 4.0, our adjustments to the agenda. I would like to move up the room fee waiver request, the Mix and Mingle Square Dance Club. I would like to move that up from item 9.4 up to 5.0. So above public comment, or I'm sorry, after public comment, so 6.0. All right. So you can put her in. All right. Are there any other adjustments?
Nope, no other adjustments.
All right. Agenda item 5.0 is public comment on agenda items. Is there anybody wishing to make public comment? They're here online. All right, seeing none, I will close public comment. All right, so our new agenda item 6.0 is the room fee waiver request, the Mix and Mingle Square Dance Club. Would you like to step up to the?
Hi there. Could I ask that you read the motion that you have?
The motion is to approve a room waiver request for Thursday night, starting September of 2022 through June of 2023 from 6:15 to 8:45 p.m.
Okay, in my letter, I would like to amend that because in my letter, it said not only a room waiver request, but a waiver of custodial fees.
Yes, I apologize. Yes, you're right. It does say a waiver of charges for the use of the multipurpose room and custodial fees at Eight Corners School.
So as you know, in the past 2 years, social dancing has taken a really big hit, especially when you have a group of square dancers, which dance in a group of 8. And they're all, touching each other all the time and dancing through each other's breath. So we're just trying to get things back to normal by asking for the same waivers that we have had previously. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions? No, I think thank you for that. So I can read through what this says. It says the Mix and Mingle Square Dance Club is requesting the waiver, like we just discussed, of the multipurpose room and custodial fees. It would be on Thursday evenings from September of 2022 through June of 2023 from 6:15 to 8:45 for square dance classes. They are a nonprofit group and have been using Eight Corners School since Bessie's school closed and have danced in Scarborough schools for more than 20 years. At the end of each year, they make a donation to the schools if funds are available. They will continue with the annual contribution if the club is able to financially do so. So do I have a motion to approve the room waiver request and the custodial fees at Eight Corners School for the Square Dancing Club?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any questions?
So this is something we already were waiving previously, and then it's because they haven't had it for a couple of years, it stopped. Now they're just wanting to go back to the way it was.
That is my understanding. Is
That's
that
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is there, I'm just trying to think through, there's the custodians, we have them, are they there during that time anyway? Is that during a shift?
Yeah.
Okay. So, we are all present today, so we can go ahead and do, vote by hand. All in favor of waiving the room fee and the custodial fees at Eight Corners School on Thursday nights for the Square Dancing Club. All right, thank you so much. The motion passes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Enjoy the square dancing. All right, agenda item 7.0 now is the superintendent's report. Jeff?
Right. Small font. There we go. No, I'm not gonna read all that. I've already- Wait a minute, no, I have to. Yeah, I just, on this slide, I just wanted to highlight the message that was already sent out, as far as an August update, and really just to extend the fact that I always forget to turn my microphone on. Just extend our thanks to everyone for just a really successful summer between our summer academy and extended school year programs to all the facilities work that's been happening, from the turf to the new STEM labs to just the buildings look phenomenal the closer we get, to bringing our kids back, and then, certainly in the last couple of days with all of our student athletes out on the new turf and also on all the new, I mean, it's just, it's getting close, although I will remind everyone, we're still in summer, and there's still some summer left. And, in addition, we've had, Wentworth was packed with community programs. It's just, there's been just a lot of energy in addition to professional development for staff and curriculum work. And so just a special thanks to everyone involved in all those efforts as we made it through the summer. And then I also wanted to take a little time, if we go to the next slide, just to highlight a new website that's for our Scarborough Schools building project, which is right on the homepage, right at the top. There's a special button for it, even when you go to it. And this new website really outlines for anyone in the public all the information that's been presented. I mean, everything is on that website that's related to this building project that that has really been talked about our facilities needs for over 10 years now. So, and that's something that we were able to highlight in a joint workshop last night between the board, this board and the town council. And what really struck me as part of the presentation was I think the reaction collectively to the timeline graphic that I just wanted to highlight in terms of our facilities at the K-2 level, and then also the middle school, where students have been in temporary classrooms. We have 30 temporary classrooms across the district, most of which have been utilized. Again, these are designed to be temporary, but have been utilized for, in some cases, in excess of 20 years. And at 4 of our schools across the district. And I think that really struck a chord in recognition of the fact that this isn't future growth or future needs that we're dealing with, but really past, present, and future, and so going through that project history in terms of our facilities needs and the need for a new school building in Scarborough for elementary and K-3 specifically, as well as 6th grade, just underscores kind of the importance of an continue to communicate and educate people about this project as we go through. So I did include the timeline link on this slide, and then in my next slide, just wanted to encourage, obviously this board and then the public to get involved in some upcoming educational visioning workshops. So the building committee that's been meeting very regularly since January of this year has also started our communication subcommittee, which has been very active within the last month and a half or so, to really get the word out on this project through social media, through the development of this website that's now linked to our homepage, and then also some of the slides that we've been sharing. We've got flyers as well that we're trying to disseminate. And then starting to talk about these 3 workshops for the fall that are all going to be happening via Zoom virtually. So people who would like to participate in these workshops, the first is September 8th from 6 to 8 p.m. The second, September 19th from 6 to 8. And the third is October 18th from 6 to 8. So we attempted to do one of these workshops in the spring. It was very challenging to get active participation in these. So I think we're in a position now where there's more awareness and there's a little more momentum here, and then obviously communication from the building committee. So I'm hopeful that we can get a good number of staff and community members involved in these workshops. And it's really designed to think through what we want this consolidated K-3 solution that or an elementary school spaces to be, taking into account all of the deficiencies of the current smaller schools. What do our kids need in this space and in this program to make sure that we're able to deliver services in the best way possible for our students? So that educational visioning piece, I think, will work most effectively when it's a combination of, district leadership, building leadership, staff, faculty, teachers, as well as parents, families, and students, frankly, even. So putting in a plug for that, for those workshops and throwing those dates out. And there's going to be obviously more communication that will come forth soon. And I think the easiest way to get people involved and to sign up for these virtual workshops will be through, like a Google form being sent out in order people can sign up and then get provided the link, and we're off and running for those dates. So anyway, but the meeting last night, I thought went really well, and it was a real collaborative tone I felt between, the council and the BOE, in terms of that discussion around, overdue facilities needs for our kids. That is my update. And it's still summer.
And it's still summer. Are there any questions or comments for Jeff? I just would add, I heard this said last night actually by Lisa, and I thought it was a really good way to describe these visioning workshops, is that they, she said they're really the meat and potatoes of this project, right? Like this is really where the exciting time to get, it's exciting to get to work in this, and what you're really doing as a participant in this is really planning for the strategic vision for the district going forward, which is really exciting. So hopefully, for those listening, there'll be some renewed interest in participating in this.
That would be great.
Yeah. Great. All right, so I am up next. Before I move into the next slide, I have two pieces of information to share. The first is that just as a side note, or just as a note, the first board meeting in September, which is September 1st, we will be fully remote because the chambers will be undergoing maintenance work. So we will actually have a fully remote meeting. So I just want to go ahead and put that on your radar now, and then let the public know that as well. All right. The second announcement is that the all district opening is August 29th at 8 a.m. So if you are available that morning and would love to come down and welcome our staff at the turf, that we will be at the new turf field. There is, as I understand, a lot of new staff members because we had a lot of retirements. So it'll be a good opportunity to welcome everybody on their first day back. So that'll be 8 a.m. to about 9:15 at the turf and track. All right, my next slide. This is the exciting one. Look at the new turf. This is our turf is open officially. It is finished. It looks beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. And this is our field hockey team that was out. So our teams that are participating in fall practices are already out already out on the field. So I have heard very positive things. I was telling Jeff, my son came home with his very first turf burn from the new turf. Yep, so it's getting its
Get it
use
in.
already. That's right. So this has been a labor of love, as we all know, and it's just great to see that it's open and it's able, you know, it's in use and the kids are really loving it already, as you can tell. That's that. All right, so my next slide. So now we're going to move into the two pieces of information, two big parts of information we have to talk about. The first are the town charter proposed changes that are before town council right now. So I spoke to John, the counselor Clucci, about a month ago about some of the changes that are in the new proposals. And at the time, what he was looking for was really to try to get our perspective on really what he's looking for is the election change. That's really where he wanted to know what our thoughts were. However, we of course are in summer session, and so we are meeting only once a month. And the reality is this was our next board meeting after when I spoke with him. And this is really a conversation that should be held in the public and really available for the public to participate in if they so chose. So I did ask him for some time to be able to speak with you. What that means though, is since they are very curious to hear what our perspective is after we discuss this tonight, I will write him and the town council a letter on our behalf, just stating what our perspective is on these changes. Like I said, he is really focused on the election one. I did, however, want to just bring this one up. This is a change in current language. So the current language. So when you're reading this one, what is crossed out and in red is what's proposed to be removed. What's in red and just in red is what is proposed to be added. So if you read this one, this is in regard to vacancies that might occur on the Board of Education. So in other words, if we have a vacancy we've just walked through this process. If it is more than 6 months beyond our next regular election, so more than 6 months, then we would have that special election. If it is less than 6 months until our next scheduled election, then the vacancy may be filled at the option of the town council. So it would not be at the Board of Education's option. So I did reach out to John this morning to talk to him to try to get an understanding around this. And I am waiting on an interpretation, but where we are right now is it appears that really that the ownership of that, the ability to put something on ballot rests with town council and not with the Board of Education. And my only worry that I see is I just want to be sure that we have a voice in this process somehow. So what I would like for us to talk about is what do we think about maybe asking or advocating for a change in the language a little bit to where maybe it says something like the vacancy may at the option of the town council after consulting with the board. Something along that lines to where we know we have a voice in this process, where we're not just idly on the sidelines.
I think maybe it should be something more like that. If we decide, if it's within 6 months, less than 6 months, like you said, that if we decide we want to have a special election, that maybe we go through the town council since they have to do it, but rather than leave it up to them or having to get their permission, I think we should be able to decide if we want to, we decided that we didn't want to fill it this time and we were going to wait. Why should they take that from us going forward?
Well, that was initially when I talked to John, when I called John, that was actually where I was going. Like, I'm not quite sure why this would change, but apparently it's a legality. So that
I understand going through them, but I think we should be able to decide we want to do it or not, rather than have them decide if it's best for us to have a special election or not. Just like we decided that, okay, you know what, we can make it until November. We don't need to do it. Why should they come in not knowing what we have going on and then decide that for us?
Because, and I asked actually about our, what we just went through. I said, well, what if we had, as a board, decided that we did want to hold a special election? He said, what would have happened is it would have gone to town council and they could have they have the authority to say, you know what, no, we're not going to hold a special election. We hear you that
No,
you
and I
want
get that.
to.
And that's fine, but we should
Yeah.
still be able to decide if we want to hold the election or at least try to have it
Yeah.
instead of them deciding, no or yes. We
Yeah,
should
like,
be able
yeah.
to, we should have the voice and then we'll go, okay, now we have to go, we decide, yes, we want to.
Mhm.
Now we know we have to go to town council
Yeah.
and ask rather than them take that away from us and say, no, we're not going to do it. Or if we don't want to do it and they just say, yeah, we're going to do it.
Mhm.
I mean, I think we should have the voice and we should drive the bus there. And then, yeah, we have to make a stop at town council before we get there, but at least we're driving the bus.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah, go ahead.
I totally agree with John.
Mhm.
I do think it should be the board's voice, and I think as strongly as we can get that language in there that will
Mhm.
pass by the lawyer would be better, like if it can say at the option of the town council based on a recommendation from the Board of Education. I think as strong as we can get it worded in there that it should be the board's choice, obviously with the town council having the legal authority to do it.
Right. Yeah, I like that language. So it's to repeat what she said, at the option, so the vacancy may, at the option of the town council, at the recommendation of the board, be filled.
I wasn't trying to make up language. I was just saying,
Well,
we
I'm
should have
gonna-
the say so.
Yeah, yes, and I
and not them.
agree. I think that where my worry was, what I told John, is that to me, when you read this as it's proposed, we end up being almost like bystanders in our process, right? Like it's kind of happening around us without us, as I read it here.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I saw.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think any language we can get their legal counsel to agree to that doesn't eliminate us from the process.
I like your wording so far,
Yeah.
and I totally agree. We did definitely need to be the driving force of it. And yes, they have the final say, but we need to be the ones spearheading it.
Perfect. All right, so we all feel good. All right, so the next one, next slide, please. This is the one that really, to borrow the phrase I just used, the meat and potatoes of where we need to look. So what this proposal would do, it would leave town council elections as is. And it would change Board of Education elections, and they would no longer happen in November. They would now happen in June when we vote on the budget. So this is something. Oh, sorry, Siri just, she wanted to be a part of it. Yes, she wanted to be a part. So this has been something that previous boards have also discussed and has really there is a lot of, I would say a lot of support for this, because you think about when you come in at now, we tend to operate off of a school year, right? So what happens right now is we have new board members that are coming in after the school year has started, after we've set goals. It's kind of this awkward time, for lack of a better phrase, right? And so if we change this to June, that gives us an opportunity to onboard new members before the school year starts. So they can kind of get their feet underneath them before we're taken off and running in September. So the other thing, and this is more of a, when we talk about professional development on the board side. So if you think about the three of you that just have come on, so Jenna, John, and Jillian, you started in November, and literally the week or 2 weeks before that is the annual school board training. So you will almost have gone a full year in your seat before you even have that training available to you. So that's where I always saw that this was the disconnect with this, because that training when I finally got it, I found it to be incredibly helpful and insightful for my seat here and defining it and what that means and our role as board members versus Jeff's role as the superintendent. So that's kind of the push for this.
I think it would also be very beneficial to committees where we don't think we just started until January with
Mhm.
when we got in and got going, and then you figure out, okay, who wants to be where? If we can do that in the summer before school starts, and then we're off and running with, committees starting in September, October at the latest, then we're months and months ahead, and I think we get a lot more done and maybe take some pressure off of certain things where we don't have to cram it into a shorter period of time. We have it's just a thought, but
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
I agree.
Yeah.
I also think would be nice, and you guys can weigh in on it, but I feel like we're very disruptive to your timeline with new board members starting in November. It might be nice for you and your staff to have board members start when you have more time to sort of invest in getting new members up to speed on how things work.
Yeah, no question. And you think about the budget cycle too.
Mhm,
You
mhm.
know, I mean, to John's point, you've got a very small window of time before all of a sudden you're consumed with budget.
Mhm. Yeah. So, yeah, and the committees, I mean, we've had some committees this year that weren't able to get started, quite frankly, until really the school year was about done, right?
Mhm.
So that's a very valid point, that's another, just an added bonus to this.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is there are a lot of districts in the state that do
Mhm.
have June elections, so it's not unusual. There's nothing, I don't even know what the numbers are, if it's more unusual to have November or June, but a lot happened in June.
So, I think I'm hearing that we're all, okay, we're all supportive of the June vote. Okay, so that's part one of this, sorry. No, you go home. please. So that is part one. Part two, if you read on where it says the term for members of the Board of Education elected on or prior to November 8th, 2022, which will be the whole board. Right? So, after this next election, when their term expires, there was a question, or part of this discussion was around, okay, how do we seat new members, right? Because all of our terms currently go November to November. So the second part of this would be that you would actually serve, instead of ending in November, you would serve until the next June. So it's going to extend your term by 6 months. No, you're going to stay on until your successors come in June.
we'll get hazard pay, right?
It doesn't affect you, but everybody essentially it will be the full board after this next election, and it may affect you. So yeah, so the full board following this next election would be impacted. So I curious to hear thoughts. Does everybody feel that would be better? Would it be better to cut your term short? This is the proposed, so the proposed language is to extend.
What's a few months? Seriously.
I think personally, for me, it would have been helpful to have those prior members on board just to ease the transition. When you're joining, you're kind of just jumping in and here's all this information. And even now, almost a year in, I'm still finding out new information. And I think having someone prior with being in whatever committees that you might be in would be able to offer their expertise and offer their knowledge. So I think it'd be really helpful and beneficial to the whole board having that support. I mean, not to say because there are other people that were on the board prior, but it's also a lot on their plate, trying to get us all acclimated to our new positions on top of the day-to-day school board activities.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's another reason why I like the June, because I think, I'm gonna use air quotes because it doesn't feel like this summer has been quiet, but our summertime is our quiet time, right? So that's when you kind of have this opportunity to really learn without jumping into the fire, so to speak. All right. All right, so do we feel good about 6 months extended? Everybody, it sounds like. Want to make sure I don't. You will get paid for, yes, your next,
Yes,
your next. 6
and-
months.
and your last 6 months could be at a higher pay rate.
Yeah,
Right.
there is a proposal for a higher, for an increase,
Time and a
yes,
half.
yes.
Yeah, time and a half.
All right, and then I think there's one more. This is just the last piece of this, and it's just describes for purposes of filling vacancies. So this was something that was missing out of the current charter, and so they've rectified that and added it in, that the June referendum is considered a normal election for us now.
I have a question about that. If
Mhm.
this passes, does
Mhm.
that make the vacancy conversation like obsolete, since every 6 months we have what is considered a regular election?
Yeah, I can go back and ask.
Wouldn't it? I mean, if this
Yeah.
passes, I don't know if they're doing the other one because they don't know if this one's going to pass.
Yeah, that's a good point. Right, is there, yeah.
If this one passes and they're now considering June and November regular elections, and then you go back to the one about board vacancies, it says like if you're within 6 months, the conversation about a special election doesn't even happen because you would just do it at the next regular scheduled election. Right?
Yeah, that, okay. I listened to the conversation last night at the town council meeting. And I guess I didn't even catch that part, but that does, you wouldn't have, yeah.
I guess
Would-
from
would it be
November to
considered-
June you would, right? Because that would be 7 months. But June to November you would not.
Well, it would still be,
Yeah.
So you would like 1 month a year.
Yeah,
But
you
that
would
would
have this
apply to-
option. Yeah, 1 month is when this would apply.
we really gotta talk this out. No. But it would still be considered a special election because it would be off term, right? I mean,
Well, it depends when it falls. So if you, or if an individual board member, it was November 1st and they decided they wanted to resign, or they had to resign from the board, that would be more than 6 months until the next election, because November to December, January, February, March, April, May, June. So you're 7 months out. So when you're 7 months out, that is where that clause kicks in, where the town council may hold a special election. Do you want to go, can you go back one or two, actually? Yeah. No, I'm sorry, I said it the wrong way. I'm sorry, let me change what I just told you. So let me rephrase that. So if it was June 1st and or June 2nd and somebody had to resign from their seat, there is less than 6 months until the next election, less than 6 months until November. So then that is when town council has the option to hold the special election. I
I'm
said
trying to
it.
think in the wording of this, if like, does the board or the council ever have the option to say, like, say our vacancy happened in July,
Mhm.
naturally, the election would happen in November. Does
Right.
anyone have authority to say, we don't even want to do that? We just want to wait until June?
Within 6 months. So if it's within 6 months, yes, that's when the town
You
council
have
can say
to have-
no. No, if it's within 6 months, the council can say no
To a special
to
election.
a special election.
But can anyone say no to filling that seat during the next regular election, or does that have to happen based on this
Oh,
language?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get
Yeah.
at. Now I'm understanding. it.
Yeah. So you're talking about, are we able, and let me rephrase and see if I have this right. Are you saying, are we able to run the board at less than 7 members?
If we choose to do that for longer than 6 months, yeah,
Right.
is that an option? Yeah, I'm assuming it's not, right?
I
It
don't- the
says
way I read this,
vacancies
it's
shall
not.
be filled.
Yeah,
Right, the first sentence
Yeah,
yeah,
describes what you're talking about, and
Yeah,
it's saying
okay.
it will.
it will be filled.
Yep.
So if it's more than 6 months, we do not have the option to run. Minus a person. Okay. All right, so I will get our thoughts over to town council. All right. Now, so we'll move on from charter language and we'll talk about the Maine School Board Association, the annual delegates meeting that comes up, comes up every year. We're soon will be in that time, and Jillian is going to represent Scarborough at the meeting, which is you'll have a great time. It's always interesting. What happens at the meeting is that delegates or representatives from all of the districts around the state of Maine get together and they discuss proposed deletions, proposed additions, and proposed new amendments to their policies and their procedures. So what I would like us to do tonight is discuss each of these, give Jillian some talking points for the meeting so that when she goes, she's accurate. She's able to say, hey, this is how Scarborough feels about these deletions, additions, and new amendments. Make sense? So the first one, there is a proposed deletion. They're proposing to delete 2 existing resolutions that you can see here. School safety and violence in the schools. So they're proposing to delete those because they think that this one, crime, violence, and discipline, covers it. So that's the rationale behind it. Are there any thoughts on this one?
I mean, it's safe to assume that they did this in consultation with their attorney, correct?
I would assume so, but that would be something that would maybe you might want to confirm when you're there. But my assumption would be yes, but
So it's just deleting a redundancy.
well,
Basic.
I actually think that if you read the originals, I think that this one is much more robust than what the two originals were, maybe 2 sentences each.
Oh, geez.
So this to me, it goes more in depth. It's more robust, has more meat to it than the other 2 did. So I actually think this one, to me, seems like a better fit. All right. Any other thoughts on this one? We good? All right, and the next one. So that was the only deletion. Then we had some proposed revisions that came through. So this is the administration of medication. So what this is saying is that the Maine School Board Association urges the local school to adopt policy governing the administration of medications to students in school. So on these slides, I copied straight out of the coloring is different because I copied straight from the proposed resolutions so that Jillian would have accurate, she'd be looking at the same thing when she's in this meeting. So there is a little bit of a difference here. The underlined words in yellow are additions, the strikeouts are proposed removals. So, to me, it's interesting that this comes up because we just did this policy and policy review. We just, in policy committee just talked about it. I'm not sure I understand what, the language to limit or prohibit current options. I don't know what current options would mean otherwise. So to me, maybe this broadens it a little bit. I don't know, do either of you have thoughts on that?
I don't have specific thoughts on it, but I do wonder, if it is really targeted to the medical marijuana policy that we have in
Mhm.
terms of medication. But at the end of the day, I think, it is the school's role to make sure that students are getting their prescribed medications.
Right. As I'm looking at this, the word option should not be struck out.
I was just gonna say.
So I
where does that
apologize.
sentence not
Yeah.
make sense?
So what it took out is the current.
Okay.
So the current is proposed to be removed, so it would actually read MSBA opposes legislation that would limit or prohibit options available. Does that make sense? So sorry, I didn't recognize that before. I apologize, I can fix it. Kelly. Yeah, I guess and maybe that's exactly what it is, because I was trying to figure out like what is the purpose of this? And it seemed to me that it's expanding that what an option is, but maybe that's exactly what it is, the medical marijuana.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a wonder.
Yeah. So is there any comments on this one? I'm not opposed to it.
I don't think we should stand in the way if somebody's doctor says that they need this. So who are we to decide that they don't?
Yeah, and my other wonder, when it says current, does that mean when options change that this has to be updated every time? Like, does it kind of take out that need to constantly come back and revise this? So to me, it might be a clerical deficiency as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that. I don't know why we would. Not want this. I don't want our choices as a board being limited.
Mm-mm. All right. This one is the main educational assessments. So that's what the wording used to be. So they're proposing to strike that and call it state assessments. This is just in line with removing the MEA language. There is a grammatical error. So when you speak with them, the and before science should come out. So it should be language arts, comma, math, comma, science. Yeah. There's just an extra and. Does
Do
that
you
make
know-
sense, Jillian?
Yeah.
That extra and? Sorry.
What's the rationale for changing it to state assessments instead of main educational assessments?
It's the name of the assessment because we are currently using the NWEA.
Yeah.
Formerly the main
Yep.
educational assessment was a locally developed assessment in the state of Maine.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So to me, this seems like something that we could easily support, right? Just. All right, so our next one. So this is legislative mandates. Does anybody have, before I go, does anybody have any thoughts on this one? This is a proposal that would limit, that essentially says that the MSBA really urges the legislator not to interfere with responsibilities at the local level, the school board level. I have very strong feelings about this. I think I made that known previously in previous situations where, and I don't believe that we should be hamstrung by what's happening at the state level, right? Sometimes, even when it's not, when it's an inadvertent interference, it still happens and it makes our job a little bit harder, right? So I am fully in favor of this. I think we were elected by Scarborough citizens to make decisions that would impact our local level and impact us locally, right? And sometimes that interference whether it's intentional or not, just makes it harder for us to make those decisions.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
I fully support that, we make the decisions for Scarborough, not all of Maine gets to make a decision for Scarborough. Agree.
I think you can mark that as highly supported.
All right.
Is there any other thoughts on this one? All right. All right, so this is scheduling of career and technical education programs. Some of this seems name change. To me anyway, what I would classify as wording change. To fit the current names of programs, adding the word guardians behind parents. What I thought was interesting is the addition of in regions. So if you look at down at the bottom A, it says provide for a greater opportunity for shared funding and decision-making responsibilities within units served by career and technical centers and regions. So to me, this is, we participate in a lot of joint ventures, I will say, with other districts, right? And that to me is what this is speaking to. And I think we have demonstrated, at least in Scarborough, that when we have that need to collaborate, we can, and it works. It works pretty well. It's just my fault. I will say I did wonder, and this would be maybe a question, Jeff, for you and Diane, about the flexibility and the scheduling of courses. I'm not sure why we would want to remove that language. And so I did have some concern there. Because when you want the flexibility to schedule those as it worked for the district. I think about like when we talk about the calendar at the start of the year, this is one of the things you consider, making sure that our calendar is in line with other districts.
Right, because that's just the nature of the model of CTE, in these regions, right? Is that it's a hybrid, it's not a fully comprehensive experience. They're half with us and half at the CTE center, so that just, and perhaps that's why that was struck, because there's an element of flexibility that you actually don't have.
You
Because of
actually,
that?
yeah, you have to become inflexible, knowing that like the way your school day is planned really needs to jive with the CTE that you're working with so that your students can access that, right? Like if we have 5 districts that are going to a CTE, those 5 districts really need to be coordinated. If we all wanted to be flexible in the way that we scheduled, our students would not have the same access to programming.
I also almost wonder if the new A that they have in there, or if that's even new, but just leaving it at decision-making responsibility sort of encompasses
Yeah,
that scheduling piece.
yeah, it's a huge challenge because there's no comprehensive CTE school,
Right.
that's standalone,
Right.
full, that's your full academic program, right? It's half in, half out, half in your home school and half at Paths or at Westbrook Vocational.
Well, that makes sense. So it's the exact opposite of what I was thinking coming in. Like where I was thinking you would want more flexibility to work. It's actually the opposite. You actually can't have that. You have to align with the other.
The scheduling
schools,
is definitely challenging.
Mhm.
You can't have that. Yeah.
Right,
It just doesn't work.
unless you change the model, obviously.
Well, that's good feedback for Julian. All right. This is the alternative certification. So this is speaking to the filling of positions where we know shortages have been an issue across the state, right? Not just in education, but really in all aspects of jobs. But this one, what I found interesting is that maybe the wording is such that perhaps you can look elsewhere in other job sectors for employees to have a employment pool. So I don't know, what are your thoughts? Do you have thoughts on this one?
But you can currently do that under the revised chapter 115 laws for certification and credentialing of employees. So someone who's coming from the private sector can be certified through an alternate pathway by having a substantial amount of credits, like I believe it's 24 credits in that discipline. So for example, if I am a biologist and I have more than 24 credits in biology, those could count towards my certification to become a biology teacher. The state's already made those pathways available.
So if you stayed at Holiday Inn Express, you can then become a teacher, or you know what I'm saying? You don't have to go the same route. It could just be whatever they decide is, like I know what happened in Florida. You can, it was just crazy how easy it was to become a teacher, where you student taught with somebody for, you know, a week and then, or 2 weeks or whatever it was. I'm sure everybody heard about this. It was like mind boggling. Are we talking about the same kind of stuff or much
No.
stricter?
Much more stringent,
Okay, good. Just making sure.
much more stringent.
So does this undo that? Like, is this, no,
No, I think that this is in support of
of
the statutory changes that have already gone into effect.
Yeah.
that? Okay.
I think there's been a recognition that there just haven't, for people who are eminently qualified to be teaching or consider teaching or
Mhm.
and have that alternative pathway and would be super effective in the classroom. They've been hamstrung by a very, very inflexible
Right.
um,
Okay.
series of requirements to get the certification that they need. Yeah.
Yeah, because in general, teacher programs are very prescriptive. So if you go through a teacher education program, your sequence of coursework would be very prescriptive, right? Because you'd have to have a methods class for this and a methods class for that, et cetera, et cetera. And what they're saying now is that they realize that there is actually a connection between doing work in that field,
Effective teaching.
right?
Right.
And I think the other value in this is that second sentence around the continuation of studying other pathways that may not have been developed yet.
Just curious if you know, is the state still issuing emergency certificates to
Yes.
teachers? Okay.
And this is a good thing for administrators as well. That same would apply that.
There are shortages
Yeah.
across every
Absolutely.
Okay.
area in education.
All right, any other comments on this?
As long as it's easier for the right people and not for the wrong people, I guess
Yeah.
is all I was concerned
Yeah.
with. Cause
Yeah.
I'm like, you just hear the horror stories and I'm like, please tell me that's not what we're
Well,
doing.
and remember, we always get to decide who we hire. Whether you're certified or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think this just opens us up to developing who you currently have. You know, given the fact that during COVID, there were all these emergency certificates given to anyone who's on paper qualified, they may not necessarily have that experience, and this would encourage that to move forward within their careers.
Yeah, because I kind of think of when you're talking about a candidate pool, right? Like you want the most viable candidate pool you can get. And that's what my reading of this and my limited knowledge seem to get at. All right. All right, the next one, this is teacher preparation programs. So again, some wording changes. at the bottom is an addition. Additionally, MSBA recommends that approved teacher preparation programs include best practices. I think this might continue on to the next slide.
Has everyone read what's on this one before I move? Shall I move it?
Do you have any thoughts on this one? I kind of wonder about the group, the collaborative on the second piece of this. I'm sorry, Diane. you just-
Oh, that's fine.
This one. So when it talks about this collaborative group and it goes through the people that should serve in it, what I don't see are teachers. I see professors, but I don't see teachers in the K through 12.
Well,
And
the-
so,
The
Maine
MBA.
Education Association,
Mm-hmm.
MEA.
Yep, the MEA is the
but
association.
would that be the actual teachers? Or would that be
Yeah.
people that work for the MEA? That would be the teachers?
What
They
up
would
to
be the voice of the
MEA,
teachers.
yeah.
Okay. I just wondered if there would be some advantages to having teachers that have just potentially started teaching, that have just gone through any sort of preparation program that could provide almost real-time insight. And I guess I read the MEAs as their staff would be, and yes, they're the voice of the teachers, but I was thinking perhaps it'd be good to have some representation, but I see what you're saying. I mean.
Mostly what I see from this is just removing the Common Core standards as part of the language,
Mhm.
so it's just broadening it to the main system of learning, versus being stuck to the Common Core standards, which is not necessarily applicable to all the needs of our students.
Yeah, there's definitely that SEL added piece, right, of the mental health component as well. So absolutely. All right, does everybody, any other comments, everybody feel good on this one? All right. All right, so now these are the proposed new resolutions. So all of the words, all of the things are brand new. So this first one involves school board public comment period. A lot of this is what we know. We have the opportunity for the public to participate in our meetings. We are allowed to set reasonable standards, which we do in Scarborough, the 3-minute period. We ask people to identify themselves now with their full name. We do ask that they conduct themselves accordingly and that we can stop public comment if they aren't. Where this changes is the public's definition, or where this would stray from what our policy says, I guess. We allow anybody to provide public comment. This would say a public is defined as a resident, a taxpayer, an immediate family member of a student or an employee. So this would limit anybody from in our case, anybody from out of Scarborough speaking at during public comment.
This would actually limit us to that, like, we can't open it up to what we would choose to.
No,
open
we
it
could
to?
choose, but I'm just using us as an example. That's what they're suggesting, that they would hold us as
But would
Is
this
there
be like
restriction?
a minimum? I mean, they can't, if we want to allow someone to speak at our meeting who doesn't live here and have any connection, we can.
Right.
Nothing restricts the school board from establishing reasonable standards.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this wouldn't restrict us. This is, I guess what I'm trying to say is this is, if we took this and then we updated our policy, we would no longer allow people outside of Scarborough to speak, which is not our current practice. We allow anybody.
Well, we don't have to change our policy
No,
in
no.
reaction to this.
No, not at all.
Well, it says that it would be a revision to state statute. And we are bound to
Mhm.
follow state
Mhm.
statute.
Well, and I guess that's my question is if this, if it is, are we actually limited to, we're not allowed to let someone speak that doesn't fit one of these categories? Like we lose that leeway?
Depends on how the statute is
Right.
written.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would have an issue with that. I think the
Mhm.
board should maintain the authority to allow people to speak who we want.
Yeah,
to allow
my,
to
my
speak.
wonder about this is this intended to protect individual school boards from, let's say, a political action committee
Mhm.
that might bombard every school board in the state with a slanted point of view on an issue or topic?
Mhm.
Yeah, which I get, I think
Mhm.
that's nice to have to fall back on as long as it's not tying our hands
Mhm.
on what we want to hear.
Right.
So, yeah, the way I read this and my understanding is that the MSBA will then advocate for a change in the statute. So as it currently sits, no. As we, in our current world, we would not have to, restrict people who speak, but if the statute is changed, then yes, we would have to. I guess I'm kind of with, I understand the reason, the protection. I know that there's been a lot of discussion, not just in Maine, but across the entire country about conduct at school board meetings and how school board members have been treated by members of the public. And so I can understand that and appreciate that. But then I also appreciate that we have this opportunity for the public to engage in our meetings. And so it feels like this is a tough. I'm not sure.
For me, I
I'm
guess,
kind of on the fence, I guess.
I don't think it's tough, just I don't want to lose control to make our own decisions,
Mhm.
and I don't know if we can just direct Jillian, like, can you get them to change the wording? I mean,
Yeah.
I guess it's back to the other thing. I don't think we should ever give up our local control.
Mhm.
I mean, we can. What would you suggest, public, they.
I guess it's more like in that section that like John had just read back, nothing in this subsection restricts the board from establishing reasonable standards. Like, why can't that also include something about
The
who
definition of the
speaks?
public.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, we could add in, including,
Or would the same thing be resolved if we said public can be defined as? Like, would even doing something like that be enough? Because then you're not saying that the public has to be defined, but you are saying that this, as a school board, you can make the decision to define it.
Yeah.
So that might be the way to say it, Jillian,
okay.
at the end there, public can be defined as.
What would the circumstances be for someone for you to essentially allow someone as part of the public to speak during public comment that wouldn't fall into one of those three categories?
I'm not sure, but I'm just not really a big fan of limiting ourselves when that situation. I don't know what the scenario is, but I wouldn't be opposed to somebody. I'm sure it's happened to people who don't live here.
Well, we've also, if you remember, we just redid this policy as well, and we took out the requirement for the address. So quite
Right.
frankly, we don't know if John Smith comes in and makes a public comment, we don't know if he's a member of the Scarborough community as our policy reads.
Well, that's an excellent point.
Mm-hmm.
And how is this being determined?
Right, are we going to ask, like, is this going to be, you must show your license at the
Right.
door? I mean, how would we police this? Or how would this be policed? I think there's, and again, it's like the good intentions, right? The good intentions of doing something, but then the logistical nightmare that comes behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll need Kelly to sit at the door to check IDs on the way in.
Can Raptor take care of this for
Yes.
us?
Gotta
Get
get a
right on
sticker.
that, get right on that.
Gotta get a sticker.
Yeah, so, does that kind of give you some feedback to provide
Yes.
with this? Like, does that make sense what we're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Was there anything else on that one? Okay. The next one, the proposed resolution is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. This is a resolution that would urge Congress to reauthorize and fully fund the idea. So it would provide 40% reimbursement for locally expended funds for special education, which is currently at the 14%.
I'm fully on board.
I am as well.
Yes.
Likewise.
Sure.
I presume you don't have there's not a reason we wouldn't want to do that, right?
We would love that.
All in.
All in, all right, so that's another highly support. All right, so the next one is the free and reduced lunch qualification. This is this one I found interesting when reading through. This is again, a resolution that urges Congress and the administration to define the poverty level requirements for the free and reduced program by utilizing this area median income. That is what's actually used when you're talking, when I went to look this up to really kind of dig into it, that's what you use when you talk about subsidized housing. So the formulas, the way I understand my reading is the formulas for subsidized housing and the formulas for reduced lunch, free and reduced lunch program are two different. So in other words, you might qualify for subsidized housing as a household, but you wouldn't necessarily, that doesn't mean you automatically qualify for the free and reduced lunch. Because they use two different formulas.
This is the one where I was hoping that Jeff and Diane could like tell us if this sounds like a reasonable.
Well, anything's better than the current metric because everybody gets free lunch now. And so the reporting of, and then Title I funding and other funding related to our kids is directly tied to a metric that we know is way,
Okay, yeah.
way underreported. Because for the last, what, 3 years?
3 years.
3 years?
Yeah.
I mean, so, as far as I'm concerned, it's so far off and we're so underreporting needs, you know, for any kind of funding that's tied to, economic status or, supporting those kinds of needs for, again, for Title I funding and everything, like there has to be a better way. I mean, talking with Kate about this because all those funding sources are tied to it, we have to encourage people to fill out those forms, but there's no incentive to do so.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and I almost wondered if because these two formulas are different, if the same formula is utilized, does that open that door up to more funding? Or does more funding become available for the district
I
because?
can't imagine that it would have the opposite effect. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we're already way, underreporting need,
Right.
as part of what we're allocated for Title I. And that also had a pretty significant impact with the ESSER
Grant.
grants as well. Huge impact.
Yeah, I had the same thoughts as you about this and the next one. They kind of go hand in hand. It's the funding for the Universal School Meals Act of 2021. That federal funding formula, I think that it's all that you're saying. we are impacted. It is adversely impacting us. Because everybody in Maine gets, and this is what this would do would be, yeah, everybody in the nation would get free lunch, right? So breakfast, like what we do in the state of Maine, we know that works. We know that there's a lot of research behind why we provide these meals, you know, the better focus, the better concentration, better grades, when they have a full, well, 2 full meals in their belly at school, right? So we know the reason why. The problem to me is, again, it's a really good intention and then the logistics behind it. Like, how do we ensure that we're not adversely impacted where Title I funds come? And right now we know that we are severely impacted.
Well, you just have to measure economic need in a different way. You can't, it can't be based on
Right.
who applies for free and reduced lunch because there is no free and reduced lunch.
Right.
That's what we need a resolution about.
You know, I mean, you're basing it on a metric that no longer exists.
Yeah, well, yeah. And how do you, we can ask parents all day, every day to please fill out the form,
But they're not gonna.
but
do
they're
it.
not going to do it because there's no reason to.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you back up one?
Mhm.
I did have one more question about this. Do you read the lunch rates, the free and reduced lunch rates? If you recall, the first year we offered the free lunches, we were grossly under reimbursed. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. And I know that has shifted
Mhm.
and that's no longer an issue. I didn't know if, the lunch rates, the free and reduced lunch rates are, as we see them now, we're still good with that, right? We're still being reimbursed.
Yes, this past year was the first year that our lunch program has ever operated in the black. If you recall,
Mhm.
you know, in previous years, at the end of the year, the school district would have to reallocate funds to the food service program because we would be in the hole by hundreds of thousands
Right.
of dollars.
Yeah.
But the reimbursement rates have really increased accordingly so that the rate of reimbursement that we receive for each breakfast and lunch is more than the cost of the meal itself. They build in the costs to produce that meal, to pay the help to make that meal, et cetera.
Okay, so we're still good there.
Mhm.
Mhm. Anything else here? Those- we're good? All right. This is the last one. Oh, you're excited. This is the repeal of the government pension offset and the windfall elimination provision. I'm just going to say, I understand what the pension offset is. It's, if you receive, essentially, if you're receiving a government pension, your social security is offset. You don't receive the full amount of social security you otherwise would receive because you have a pension. What I'm not clear on is how that translates to a quality of pooled teachers.
Because unless you go into education as a career for life, you are definitely at a loss. Because if you worked in the private sector, let's say for 20 years, and you paid into Social Security, and then you decided, I think my calling is really to become a teacher, I'm going to go into education. In the state of Maine, right, you discontinue even paying into Social Security, and now you're in the government pension. And so when you retire, all of those quarters that you receive through Social Security are compromised.
You don't
And-
get what you put in, like, you don't get the social security that you paid for the 20 years in the private sector?
You can't.
No,
it's
there's an
called
offset.
double- It's called double dipping.
Right.
Yeah.
So they won't allow this is my father's life.
Right, and
Yeah.
your pension as a government employee is based on 2% for every year of service. So if someone were a teacher for 20 years, they would only be eligible for 40% to figure out on the education side of things. versus a colleague that might be of the same age who taught for 40 years, who's eligible for 80%.
Hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And as a new employee coming into the district cannot say, you know what, I don't want to participate in the pension program.
That's correct.
So you do think that these two things affect the pool of teachers?
It certainly doesn't help us, the current situation. And that offset even includes if just your spouse pays into social security and you pay into government pension, right? Because as you retire, you make choices about, how much of the social security is the person gonna take? Do they give a certain percentage over to their spouse, right? In the case that, that person passes away first, et cetera.
I know that many other states do not have that provision, and so the incentive to come to Maine, as a second career teacher.
And this doesn't have any additional financial, like eliminating these doesn't have any additional financial burden for the district.
I don't believe so. Because we don't pay into social security for
Right.
our people who have government pension.
Yeah.
You don't get both. You actually get way overtaxed at tax time. Because it's considered as income. Crazy as that is.
Well, that makes sense now. Thanks for explaining it, Diane. All right, that is the last one. How do you feel? Do you feel good going into, is there anything else you need from us? All right. All right. We will go on. Agenda item 9.0 is committee reports. First, communications.
All right, so we are officially launching the Spotlight Awards. We've talked about this a lot. There are live links. We will be sending out a communication to the staff, the district staff, hopefully this week. And looking forward to getting that together to present in October.
Any questions for Jillian? All right.
And yeah, so I just was saying that our next meeting is the first Tuesday of September at 11:30. We will meet again remotely and the first Tuesday of every month thereafter. And there is a link to the nomination form, but I don't think that translates to what we publish online. I wasn't sure. But I put it on there anyway, and we'll get the links up.
Thank you. All right. Jenna.
Yeah, so our last meeting was August 11th. We had discussed items to be presented to town council at yesterday's workshop. And Jeff, you did a great job presenting it to the town. I think everyone did a great job answering all the tough questions and giving their anecdotals. And I think with your presentation, Diane, earlier, but it just kind of highlights the need of our buildings. And one of the things that we've been discussing regularly is the current financial impacts of not having this new building. So, like energy costs and operational costs are skyrocketing due to inadequate insulation, higher operation costs due to age and small size of our facilities, added costs for travel time for our specialists from school to school. And it also costs more to modernize our K-2 schools and operate them than to build a new energy efficient consolidated school. That was the highlight of our last conversation. And before you know it, we're going to start budget planning for the next year. And our next meeting will be September 8th, I think.
Hey, are there any questions for Jenna? All right, thank you, Jenna. Are there any other board or liaison reports? All right. Agenda item 10.0 then is new business. 10.1 are appointments. 10.1.1 is behavior specialist.
Hey, Naomi Couture has been nominated to fill this newly created position. Ms. Couture received both her Bachelor's of Science degree and her Master's of Psychology degree from Kaplan University. She worked for 1 year as a special education aide in Vicenza, Italy, and for the last 4 years, she's been with the Margaret Murphy Center for Children in Sacco.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the behavioral specialists?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? All right, it passes unanimously. 10.1.2 is the middle school math interventionalist teacher for a 1-year position.
All right, Andrea Giddings has been selected to fill this position created by resignation. Ms. Giddings earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology and anthropology from Middlebury College. She's been teaching math in several main school districts, including Sullivan and Northport, since 2016. And she has also instructed as a math teacher in Chiang Mai, Thailand for 2 years.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the middle school math interventionalist teacher 1-year position?
So moved.
Second?
Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, this is unanimously. 10.1.3 is a high school STEM teacher.
All right, I don't think I've ever read this sentence before. Kerry Kurtz has been chosen to fill this position created by his own retirement. Mr. Kurtz received his Bachelor's of Science degree in Geological Science from Rider College and a secondary science certification from Metropolitan State College. He has over 20 years of teaching physics, chemistry, geology, astronomy, and marine studies in Cape Elizabeth schools and 2 years at Scarborough High School.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the high school STEM teacher?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Perfect, it's unanimous. All right, 10.1.5 is a high school English teacher.
Lauren Lamoro has been selected to fill this position created by resignation. Ms. Lamoro earned her Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Louisville and her Master of Arts in Teaching from Bellarmine University. She's been a high school English teacher for 9 years. In the last 6 years, she was at Sanford High School.
Do I have a motion to approve the high school English teacher?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Kristen just,
Yeah, we skipped over the Wentworth.
yes, notified me of that. So I'm gonna move back up to 10.1.4, which is the Wentworth School Classroom Teacher, which is a 1-year position.
Dominique Matozzi has been nominated to fill this position created by a 1-year leave of absence. Ms. Matozzi received her Bachelor of Fine Arts from USM and her Master of Science in Teaching from Fordham University. She's a 2nd grade teacher in Young School in Saco for 3 years and most recently a 3rd grade teacher at Reich Community School in Portland.
Perfect. Do I have a motion to approve the Wentworth School Classroom Teacher 1-year position?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so now we'll move back to 10.1.6, which is the high school varsity head swim coach.
Yes. Morgan Royal nominated as varsity coach for swimming at Scarborough High School.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the high school varsity head swim coach?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. All right, 10.1.7 is the Pleasant Hill School Special Education Teacher.
So Holly Silva has been nominated to fill this position created by resignation. Ms. Silva received her Bachelor's of Science degree from University of Southern Maine and is pursuing her master's degree from UMF. She has worked with the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, Casco Bay Community Support Services, and most recently with Margaret Murphy Center for Children.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the Pleasant Hill School Special Education Teacher?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Perfect, it passes unanimously. And then last but not least, the Eights Corners School art teacher.
Emily Hill has been chosen to fill this position created by resignation. Ms. Hill earned her bachelor's degree in art education from the Ohio State University, where she is also currently you like that one. She's currently working towards her master's degree. She has been a painting instructor and studio coordinator at Cheers to Art Studio in Cincinnati and also at Muse Paint Bar in Portland. Currently, she's a student support specialist for the College of Graduate and Professional Studies at UNE.
Do I have a motion to approve the Eight Corners School art teacher?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Perfect, it's unanimous. Thank you. All right, agenda item 10.2 is the second reading of policy JICA, which is student dress. If you remember, when we discussed this at the last meeting, we had a lot of questions and conversation around some of the things that were missing, right? Missing from the policy. So we did put those back in. So if you look at the working draft that was in your materials, for example, we did put in a sentence that students are now required to wear footwear at all times, so that we we took care of that omission, and that footwear should be appropriate for the school setting. We also, underneath the prohibited items under C, we did add the sentence that the school administration has the authority to prohibit other logos, pictures, or messages which they determine to be a violation of the board's non-discrimination or harassment policies or disruptive to the school's learning environment. So we did put that back in there. And then the last thing we changed is at the bottom, we had discussion about the consequences and how that was missing from this new policy. So what we did, we had a lot of conversation around that, and where we ultimately ended up is that we would add this piece to the sentence that says that the superintendent is responsible for the administrative procedures in accordance with policy JK, which is a discipline policy. So that I think we covered all of the criteria that we discussed the last time. So first, I have a motion to approve the second reading of policy JICA student dress.
So moved.
Second.
And is there any discussion?
Just thank you for addressing the changes.
You're welcome. All right, all in favor? All right, unanimously approved. Can we, as a side note, do we remember the students that came to the policy committee meeting? Do we mark their names down? It would be, I'm just thinking it would be nice to send them this so that now they know it's a done deal.
We had three, correct? I
We
could,
did. I wasn't at that meeting. I don't, did you reflect it in your notes?
Oh, I didn't realize you went there.
I know.
I know of
couple.
one,
I
yeah,
know, yeah.
yeah, it just, maybe we can identify them offline and just send this out to them. I think that would be nice. Okay, the 10.3 is the first reading of policy IJJ, which is the selection of educational materials. This is another one that we worked on as a committee for quite a few months to get this where we're ready for first reading. The big change with the model policy was there was an option for the board to two options. One, for the board to delegate the selection of materials to professionally trained staff, essentially. The other option is that we would approve every piece of material that comes through. So what that looks like in real time is approving thousands upon thousands of pieces of material. So our current policy was a delegation policy. So as a committee, we felt, you know, when you think about the board's role versus the superintendent's role versus the staff's role, our role is really that 30,000 foot view. And this is something that we could delegate appropriately to Jeff and his team to do. So we did go with the delegation approach. Because we have as a board set the goal of the diversity, equity and inclusion goal, that sentence was beefed up a little bit to include those words. So it is professionally trained staff, including those trained using a diversity, equity and inclusion lens. Beyond that, I think majority of this stayed the same. I just want to verify before. Yeah, the rest of it has stayed the same. The other piece in here that we did discuss as a group is the challenge materials policy. We just wanted to be sure that all of the steps seemed understandable, readily understandable to staff and parents should they need to challenge material. And so we felt that it was still, everything in there was still relevant and still outlined as it should be. All right, so do I have a motion to approve the first reading of policy IJJ, the selection of educational materials?
So moved.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion? Yeah. Go ahead.
I think I'm okay with that option one of the delegation. I am not on board with including the language around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't think that we as a district have adequately defined what that means for us. And I don't think the community is adequately informed of that. So for me, I think it's a little premature to have that language in there.
Okay, we can bring that back to policy. Are there any other discussions? Okay. So we'll bring that back. for our next policy meeting. All right. All in favor of the first reading? There's no more discussion. Okay. All right. Yeah. Oh, so yes, all those not in favor of the first reading. Thank you. All right, we did. Okay, so agenda item 11 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All right, thank you so